once again on Lagos Television. With me in the studio to discuss, to my right, I have Taiwo Olapade. Taiwo, nice having you.
I'm glad to be here. Good afternoon.
Yes, to my extreme right, I also have Nelson Ekujumi. Coincidentally, Nelson was in Edo State. Nice to have you on Top Point.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, viewers.
Yes, let me start with you, Nelson. Since you were actually in Edo State, let me first give you the right to first talk on that election. What did you observe there?
Well, thank you very much. The election has come and gone, but the general consensus is that it was a very peaceful election in which across the 18 local governments, this apprehension we had about the election being characterized by violence was almost totally absent. And the voters themselves came out. It rained, which could have also prevented some persons from coming out. And some persons would even use that as an excuse not to come to vote because every one of us got drenched in the rains. The security deployment was top-notch. You had motorized patrols as well as roadblocks. If you don't have a business being on the road, you are politely turned back. You had policemen at the polling stations without arms. So that gave people a lot of confidence to come out and vote because in the course of our interaction at the polling stations, you had people saying, let me say it in their local language. When I dey come, Mama so person say make I first go. If nothing happen, then he go come. He go no say if you come vote. People were apprehensive, but we thank God it went smoothly. Even polling stations, like Edo has said the pace, became like a carnival. There was nothing he wanted to buy, to eat or drink that was not available. But they didn't allow them to come into the polling venue. So by and large, it was a successful election from the polling station level. And we must give a big kudos to the security agencies for the way they provided security, which enabled a lot of people that wanted to vote to come out. We must also commend the media for the reportage of the elections. And the successfulness and the peaceful nature of the election can be gleaned from the comments by the major political parties, gubernatorial candidates, where all of them said the process was seamless and peaceful. And INEC must be commended because their personnel showed a clear understanding of their functions and their machine. Because we had a situation whereby voters could not spend more than 3 minutes max to collect to be accredited, to collect ballot paper to vote. So it made the process seamless. And it was such that where the Beavers machine cannot authenticate your thumb, your facial capture was deployed immediately. So it reduced, when people stay too long on queue, they become agitated.
Yes.
But when you don't vote, I don't vote. So people were coming. It went well.
Yes, that's a first-hand assessment from Nelson Ekujumi, who also a civil society activist who was also in Edo State. Taiwo, you were not in Edo State, neither was I in Edo State, but reports came in. Now, some of the things you heard, were they different to what Nelson just mentioned?
Well, thanks so much. The explanation from Mr. Nelson Ekujumi, it was a perfect one. The summary on the election was okay, was nice, except for the fact that for me personally, the level of voter apathy is also unfortunate because in the build-up to this election, we learned that about 2.6 million people are registered for the election, and about 2.2 thereabouts collected their PVC, just like what we had during the 2023 general elections. INEC told us categorically that about 93 million Nigerians were registered, and about 86 million collected their PVC. But lo and behold, what was the outcome of the election? I'm not using that to castigate the election, but I'm stressing the need for us to please come out and exercise our franchise. About 26 million was what was what we got from that election. I think about 25 million among APC, PDP, and the Labour Party, and we had close to about 1 million votes that was voided.
That was 2023 presidential election.
Yes, and INEC told us that 86 million Nigerians collected their PVC, just like what we had in Edo State, 2.6 million. But the total population of people that came out to vote is just about less than about even 30% or thereabouts. So for me, it doesn't all go well. Whether we like it or not, democracy is the government of the people, by the people, and for the people. But in a case where people now decided on their own not to come out, that means something is wrong somewhere.
Could the rain have affected? Because Nelson, you said something when you started speaking that rain could be a factor. Apart from rain, were there other environmental factors that could have affected people from coming out?
Yes, the part of the environmental factors that could have affected the turnout is the violence that preceded election proper. You know, the campaigns of the parties will witness violence, and you can also see that from comments of people that I don't know whether they will fight again today. I no go, maybe they no go break my head. You know, that is also a factor. With that, you know, as a man, even in our homes, if there's violence, if violence has characterized the election day, even when you want to go out, your wife will be begging you, please don't go, don't turn me into a widow. You know, but unless you are determined and you say, don't worry, I'll go. If there's anything, I will know how to find my way. If your wife tells you that, the likelihood of her ever coming out to vote is zero. It means she has been disenfranchised by that fear. So, apart from the rain, and I can tell you for free that it's not that it rained all through. It started raining around 11, and by 1 thereabouts, the rain stopped. It started drizzling a bit. But even as at that, if anybody had the intention of coming out to vote, he or she will come. But because of that fear, because of the economic situation of the country is also a factor.
Okay.
People will tell him, why am I voting? You know, this, that. So, like he has rightly said, our voters turnout is something we really need to work on. And let people take it off their minds to hold their preconceived notions about our elections. Our elections are such that whatever the people decide is what we will obtain at the end of the day. And that can also be seen from the fact that these days our election has been characterized by people buying votes. If the voter is not important, if your vote does not count,
Of course.
why are they offering you X, Y, Z to come and vote? So it means they recognize that without you there voting, they cannot be in office. So the voter apathy is something we'll continue to talk about, because it's not a discussion that we can begin and end here.
Okay, and let me talk. Taiwo, let's look at the credibility of the polls, gentlemen. But let me start with Taiwo. How credible is or was the electoral process in Edo State, and how credible are we expected to have elections in Nigeria? Because some people will look at some of the factors that made a candidate win an election and say, hey, it is credible. Some will say it is not credible at all because of one or two hiccups here and there, which may likely occur during elections, some factors.
Well, before I give my response to that, I would like to also quickly back up the point made by Comrade Nelson Ekujime as regards the voter apathy. The deployment of the police and also some other security outfits, I was expecting that could have also removed the fear of violence and the likes, because we learned about 35,000 policemen were deployed. People even complained that the election was also becoming militarized somehow. So for me, I think that should be good enough for people to believe in the process and say, okay, I need to exercise my franchise. That should have removed the fear, except if there are other reasons why the people of Edo State decided not to come out. And in terms of credibility of the election, to a large extent, the election was credible, except the fact that, number one, INEC, for me, they need to really go back to the drawing board. We'll be having the Ondo State governorship election by November. And this is an off-cycle election. We are conducting election in one state, for God's sake. So there are no genuine excuses on the side of INEC for we to experience delayed materials being delayed to polling units, the ad hoc staff not being seen for 2-3 hours. And you know, in an election that's supposed to start 8 o'clock and end around 2:30, people have been there like 30 minutes, 1 hour ahead. So we saw videos of people who came out to vote as early as 7:30, 8 o'clock, and I was still there around 10:30, 11. No INEC official inside. In some of the polling units, I'm sure you are on ground, and that is not good enough, because that will also give room for speculation, for suspicion on the side of
and
INEC.
Discouragement also.
Of course, because people are also monitoring back home that, in fact, those who are even being at the polling unit, they have not even been able to exercise their franchise. So I don't know what exactly the reason INEC will give for the delay in the commencement of voting in most of the polling units. And for me, is one thing that I really want INEC to go back to the drawing board and ensure that this does not repeat itself come November, when we have Ondo State governorship election.
Okay, Nelson, I need to mention this because it's also on issue. The All Progressives Congress National Publicity Secretary is accusing Yaga Africa, because the Yaga Africa is saying the process of that election is faulty, and that in some areas the election were manipulated and figures were manipulated, but they say the election is credible, but that in results transmission, results collation, there were issues there. How true is this? And because APC is saying no, there's nothing like that.
Well, first and foremost, like Mr. Lapade said, there were delays in very few polling stations, but that is not excusable. We must demand that INEC gives us 100% performance at every elections. We recognize that in most polling stations, they came early, they set up the Beavers machine. The functionality of the Beavers machine was about 99%. The areas where these delays occurred is even less than 0.05%, if you ask me. But even as at that, we are the ones clamoring for voters' turnout. If a voter realizes that his friend or his brother or his father or his sister has gone to the polling unit since 7 o'clock, and as it's 11 o'clock, the people who are supposed to conduct it have not come, they will say, "She be a tell you now. Say, I know they go out. I beg, I know they come, Joe." Even some persons there will decide to go home and not return.
Yes.
It was because of these voters' apathy before, we accredit.
Yeah.
You go back. There's a time for voting.
And you come back.
You come back. A lot of persons will accredit, they will not come back.
So it was changed.
But now it's accreditation and voting simultaneous, just to ensure that people perform that, because we recognize that challenge then. So talking about the credibility, I think it is important for us to recognize that our elections is governed by laws and their processes. Yaga said Yaga is an observer organization, like so many other observer organizations that were accredited to observe the election, of which my organization was one. Yaga said the election went well, creditably, successfully at the polling stations. They said it was at the collation level that their estimates shows that everything was not all right. And we need to ask, their allegation against collation centers, was it at the ward level or at the local government level or at the state collation level? Because the election has different stages. At the polling station, the voter is present. When it gets to the ward level, they collect all the polling stations that makes up a ward. At that level, the electorate is absent. The party agents are there, the security agencies are there, the media is there, observers are also there with the INEC officer. So when it finishes from that ward level, it goes to the local government. And at this every level, whatever discrepancy that is discovered must be trashed out before it moves to that level. Because at the ward level where results come from polling station, all the agents involved will sign that it is well. Any agent that has any challenge will take it to the next level. They will note it. So my question to Yaga is that at what level? Because Yaga's allegation is based on projection. And projection is different from actual figure. The election is conducted by INEC. The parties signed the result. Even the security agencies themselves sign result sheet because they must have a copy. Apart from signing, you are entitled to a copy under law. So if you say you suspect based on your projection, except for me, I see it as arrogance for you to assume your projection will determine the credibility of a process that you don't know how they organized it. That you are, because INEC is not part of YAGA. It's just like me writing my report. There are so many organizations that will write reports of election, process after the conclusion. So these allegations that YAGA has raised, we will not dismiss it if we really want to move forward, if we want to be seen as serious people. But what we will do is to investigate those allegations such that if there's credibility in it, we'll come out and say that. But if there is none, then we'll come out and tell the world, look, YAGA, you goofed. Because I don't expect YAGA to just say at the collation level there was a suspected manipulation. The collation level is about 3 levels. Is it the 3 levels that there was compromise, or is it 1 or 2? So as social scientists, we must be able to decipher the facts. It's just like somebody telling me now that my phone is missing. The first thing I'll ask you, when did you observe it? I won't say your phone is missing. Was it last year? Because that's a long stretch. For you to be able to narrow it and find out where exactly the incident happened, you ask him, immediately you got to work today, did you make a call with it? If you say no, I'll tell you maybe you left it at home. But if you say you have used it at work this morning, I will know that your home is totally out of the picture.
You narrow it down to office.
Then we start looking at the office. So if YAGA is raising this allegation, we must be able to ask YAGA, because these are very serious allegations that cast doubt on the credibility of any election. So we must be able to ask YAGA, please, can you substantiate these allegations based on facts? The results that you have. YAGA deployed observers in about 300 polling stations. Elections was conducted in 4,519. So our representative is 300 polling stations to arrive at tainting the credibility of an election conducted in 400.
Yes, let me let Taiwo also speak to this issue, because YAGA is saying that those things were actually conducted in some local governments. Those manipulations were also just conducted in some
tell us the levels.
Local
governments. The levels are the local governments.
Yes, so
there are different levels.
Taiwo.
Well, for me, number one, in conducting election, we made use of beavers. Beavers is what was used to accredit voters. Yeah. And that's to, number one, authenticate the list that INEC usually placed on the wall for people to come. You check your name on the list, then from there, with your voter's card, you move to the electoral officials, and then, from there. So beavers alone will show us that you can. Sometimes I wonder when they say there is overvoting. Overvoting how? But you never can tell politicians across board. They know how to manipulate the process. Because if indeed we made use of beavers to accredit every other voter at every other polling unit, I don't see any reason why there should be an argument from party A or party B as to discredit the conduct of the election. So secondly, like Comrade rightly said, for every polling unit, there must be election results that every other candidate, every other agent must append their signatory. They must sign to show that, this election, this is the actual voters that came out, and this is the actual number of the votes, that each of the candidate or political party, as the case may be, got from each of the polling units. So I know definitely that this election will go to litigation. I know definitely, particularly between the big wigs, the APC or the PDP, as the case may be.
Okay.
But going for litigation, that means you must have a proof to show that this social polling unit or the local government, these are not the actual result. Because we also watched the collation center of the result. We watched it live, and we saw the way some party agents were, at every other point saying that no, this was manufactured. This was not the actual result. So if you have collated result from the ward, from local government and to the state, and your agent signed all those results collated, I hope any candidate or party that want to go to litigation, go to court to challenge, will have enough proof, evidence. Not that you just go to court, waste your money and waste your time. But for me, using beavers alone will show credibility and will be able to tell us indeed how many people came to vote at each of the polling units.
Nelson, as we round up.
Yes, I think it is important for us, like I said earlier on, to understand how the process runs. The beavers is such that at times there could be manipulations at the polling stations. But when they get to the collation center, that is the ward. What the ward collation officer of INEC does is to look at the beavers machine. At times, the beavers will record 122 people voted, accredited. That's the beavers. When they look at your result sheets that all the parties have signed, if your result, the ballot papers exceeds that 122, assuming now beavers records 122 and it gets to the ward collation center, the ward collation officer of INEC didn't go to the polling station with you. Sure. There are so many, so it checks every beavers machine for each polling station. If the number of ballot papers recorded is higher than the number recorded by the beavers has been accredited, that means manipulation has taken place. They would nullify that result. Then we must also not forget that a lot of times when results are being collated or when results are being announced, party agents say that their party are losing, because you talked about the presence of party. Some party agents will just walk away. Okay. They won't want to sign. I've been an agent.
I know we would have gotten enough time to speak. Time is not really on our side. We need to quickly round up. It is expected that all concerned will do what is right to ensure that we have credible and more credible in that case electoral process so that things can go right. I want to thank you so much, gentlemen. Taiwo, I want to thank you for being part of Talk Point.
Thank you so much, Brian.
Nelson, I also want to thank you for being part of Talk Point.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Yes, 767 and 112 are still the lines to always call when there are times of emergencies. Stay out of trouble. Ensure that you do what is right so that Nigeria and Lagos can get better. I am Omaduru Soul, saying bye-bye.
The views expressed on this program do not represent that of the producer, management of Lagos Television, or the Lagos State Government. They remain the perspectives of those expressing them. Thank you for staying with Lagos Television.